Hello, welcome to what is probably the last Garibaldi Red of the year as we reflect on Nottingham Forest's 2-0 defeat to Middlesbrough, a result which leaves them 9th, 2 points off the playoffs, ahead of a game against Huddersfield on Saturday. And to discuss all that and some transfer news, we're joined first of all by our Reds reporter, Sarah Clapson. Hello, Sarah, you well?
Yes, very well, thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you. Unfortunately, you had to go to Middlesbrough yesterday, but in much more depth. And our second guest today is Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, are you well? And did you have a good Christmas?
Morning, Matt. All good for me. Furthest north I got was Ravenshead, so can't complain.
Good. Well, you and I, and obviously Sarah, did watch the game at Middlesbrough. Sarah, why don't we start with you? Bit of a disaster, I guess, overall. Forest were allowed a bit of a disaster given how they've been playing, but what did you make of it?
Yes, I think that's probably about it, really. They were poor. They were nothing like the Forest that they have been in recent weeks. Nothing like the Forest of Steve Cooper, really. Just looked very off the pace. All the nice passing moves that they've been showing recently didn't really happen. They never quite got to grips with the game. First half, they were really below par. I thought the second half they did improve a bit. They had a decent spell, had a couple of chances. If Philip Zinkenagel had scored that one, I think it would have been completely different. But he didn't. Joe Worrell missed a header soon after, and then Middlesbrough dealt the sucker punch by scoring when Forest were in the ascendancy, really. And that kind of set them back a little bit. But I think the own goal early on probably set the tone, and it just never really happened from there. But an off day, a one-off, hopefully, and I think that they're probably allowed that, given that they've been in such good form lately.
What did you make of it, Temps? Before the game, you said you'd take a draw gladly. You didn't even manage that, although it was a difficult opponent. Middlesbrough looked very good. But what were your overall thoughts before we get into it properly?
I'd echo Sarah's thoughts. I mean, clearly we were off the pace, but to move that debate on a bit, I think we're entitled to be for a game off the back of the run that we've just had. So we're looking at Forest through a different lens now. But that was a routine result 4 months ago. And now we're sitting here really angry that we've lost 2-0 on the road against a good Middlesbrough side, rejuvenated under Wilder, who looked like a potent threat. So I think the best team won yesterday. Plenty of ifs, but some maybes with the chances that we missed. But no complaints, really. We've just got to get back on the horse and on to the next one.
We're live on YouTube and Facebook as normal. So if anyone's got any questions or comments, drop them in and we'll take them as we go along. Although obviously we've got lots of stuff to discuss ourselves. What went wrong in the first half, Sarah, do you think? I mean, individually and collectively, they seem well off it. But when you had the perspective of being in the ground, what went wrong specifically for Forest?
I think that they just never really got going. I think they looked better in the second half when they did switch to a back four. I think in the first half when there was a three, the wing backs didn't really get forward as much as they would normally do. And I know that's partly because of the change in team selection. Obviously, they were really short of options yesterday. And that didn't give Forest the same kind of threat that they normally have. They didn't press in the same way that they normally do. They just never really... Middlesbrough caused them so many problems and they just looked so wobbly at the back. They just looked really defensively troubled by it. And it was difficult then for them to get to grips with it and to start to try and impose themselves on things. Like I said, I think after the break when they switched to four at the back, they did do that. And then once they got back into it, Middlesbrough then went and killed the game off. And that was that really. They did have a couple of chances towards the end, but you never really felt like it was going to be a repeat of Bristol City where they managed to scrape something by grabbing a couple of goals. It was just one of those afternoons, I think.
Yeah, the wing backs, when they've been playing well, Temps, the wing backs get right on the pitch, didn't they? And obviously Forest, they were really pinned back, the two lads. I mean, Finback's got a very bright future, but it wasn't his day. He had a bit of a nightmare 10-minute spell. And like Sarah said, the midfield pressing just seemed to disappear, didn't it, in the first half?
Yeah, I mean, with that shape of the Forest play, the wing-backs are so essential, and you have to have the right profile of player playing there. And I think we have that in Djed Spence and Max Lowe. When they're not available, Colback's plugging in because you have to find a way to get him in that side. And like you say, I don't want to attack Finback because he's been asked to do a job in the absence of others. But he's a right back who's probably learning that system now as it's being played through the under 23s and the other teams throughout the Forest setup. But he did look exposed. But I think being put into a top end championship team, albeit having impressed in the League Cup, is going to be a huge step up. And with that in mind, he looked quite limited. He was playing as like almost in a containing role. He didn't have the experience, the pace, the quality to pose any kind of potent attacking threat. And the flip side of that is Jones and Taylor, very experienced playing that position for Middlesbrough, looked to exploit it. And they both had a lot of joy in the first half, in particular, before we changed the system. But what we saw Middlesbrough do yesterday was what we've been doing to other teams. They bullied us using those two channels down the left and right hand side. We've been using those channels to launch our attacks, and all of a sudden the ball's distributed in a different way. We didn't have quite the same pattern of play. Worrell and McKenna have been getting on the ball, less and less in recent weeks. Yates has been dropping in to try and distribute, and we've used those wide boys. So yeah, I think that was the start of the downfall, kind of plugging in those two players into a system that had been working, but them not having quite the same effect on the game that we've seen from Djed Spence in particular.
I suppose, Sarah, Spence has been so integral, and I think the instinct was he was definitely going to be recalled initially in January when Wilder came in. That was kind of the vibes you were getting from up north. But Jones looked so good for Middlesbrough. I mean, does that give hope that maybe Forest can negotiate a way that maybe they slip Middlesbrough a few quid, to say, we'll keep him till the end of the season now? Well, what do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I think that performance from Jones and the result yesterday probably did Forest a little bit of a favour in that sense. But it's so difficult to predict what's going to happen with Spence. But yesterday just underlined really how important he is. He was sorely missed, and again, without kind of not wanting to lay any blame on Finn Back or anything like that, or any kind of disrespect towards him, but Spence was hugely missed yesterday, and he's such an important player. He's just been so consistent really this season, been near enough and ever present, just offers so much. Defensively, I think he does have areas he needs to improve on, but going forward, he's just brilliant. He's got so much pace and attacking threat, and he can put crosses in, and he just offers a lot, I think, for Forest, and trying to find a replacement for him if he does get recalled would be really difficult.
Let's talk about the first goal then, because it was so pivotal. I mean, Forest hadn't started great. They hadn't started particularly badly, but they absolutely went to hell after they did concede that goal. What was your take on it, Temps? I mean, is the blame 100% at Yates, or do you give a little bit to Samba for... I'll come to Sarah first.
No, it's fine. Yates, he wanted the ball. So you watch that clip back. He absolutely wants the ball to feet. He has the chance to play it first time to McKenna at left back in acres of space. He has a kind of half missed touch. And before he knows it, he's reverting to his keeper. He's not stood where he wants him to be. I attach the blame for that goal to Ryan Yates, but it's a freak occurrence. It's not symptomatic of him being a bad player or him having lost form. It's the kind of thing that happens in football. Back in the day, it would have ended up on a Nick Hancock DVD at Christmas. He'll play 200 more matches for Forest. That'll never happen again. Freak occurrence, but could have been so easily avoided if he just played that first time pass to the left back. Yeah,
Sarah, you go along with that?
Yeah, I would agree. He just didn't look. He just played the ball without looking, and I think that's a fatal error, really, when you're passing it back to your goalkeeper. And it was just horrible to watch. And you could see as the ball went in, he knew what was going to happen. He knew he'd made a mistake, and he just couldn't look. And then he had his head in his hands afterwards, and I think he knew that he'd slipped up there. It's a shame because he has been in such good form recently, and he's just been transformed under Steve Cooper. But it's hopefully a one-off, and I'm sure he'll hopefully put it to the back of his mind and move on from it. I think it did play on his mind a little bit afterwards. You could see he didn't quite regain any kind of composure, and he wasn't the same as he has been in recent weeks. But he needs to put it to bed now and move on from it.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Definitely his fault, but he's been playing very well, so we'll let him have that one. Brings us to kind of half time and trying to change the game. I thought Djed was probably the change to get an extra man in midfield, and maybe you take Figueiredo off, or you take back off and put someone else as a makeshift right back, should I say. He went with Carvalho, so which brings us to the inevitable Carvalho discussion. This is where the comment section probably comes to life. What do you make of Carvalho, Temps? Because he's never put in a position to succeed in the perfect scenario, but then a player actually has to get a grip of the game when they're given an opportunity. And once again, I don't think he did it, did he?
No, he didn't. Look, he's a luxury player, isn't he? And we've said this before. So if Carvalho is going to be in your team, and Zinchenko's the same to a lesser extent, you've got to accept they're going to make mistakes. Occasionally, they're going to be a bit wasteful in possession because they're going to try things to unlock defences. I think as things stand at the minute, Zinchenko is far more likely to come off than Carvalho. Sorry, his efforts to impact the game are far more likely to come off than Carvalho, who looks a little bit lost. He's scrapping for minutes. He's not starting games. And when he gets the chance to make an impact, he feels the need to impress. And he just seems starved of the ball to me. I think yesterday's, again, I can't pinpoint too many things he did wrong. But the system doesn't deliver him the ball, the possession he needs, and the areas of the pitch where he can affect it. So unfortunately for me, I think he's fallen down the pecking order. He seemed destined to fall further. And I don't think it'll be too long before when Cooper looks to the bench in need of making a change, he looks to his left or his right.
Yes, your youngest sounds as frustrated as some of the fans were yesterday.
I think he is. I think he wants his nap, which is probably how I felt at half time.
What do you think about Carvalho's situation, Sarah? I mean, there's only so many lives you have. We're coming up to January. It's going to be difficult to move on because there's the well, I don't know what money he's on, but Forest have to pay this annual fee for him. Will there be any takers for him? What do you think the kind of the lay of the land is with Carvalho now?
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? When you've got players that aren't playing, they're not in the shop window, and teams aren't going to pay out the kind of money that you'd perhaps like. It's difficult for him. I think yesterday wasn't the kind of game where it didn't play to his strengths. It was difficult for him to come on and make any kind of impact because nobody did in a Forest shirt, really. It wasn't really suited for him. He does well when he has a bit of freedom and he can express himself a bit more, and maybe the pressure's off a little bit when he just has the opportunity to roam a little bit and try and make something happen. And then sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's that inconsistency, isn't it? And that's kind of been a frustration really for his whole time at Forest. There's no doubt he's got loads of talent and he's got ability. It's just getting it out of him and getting him to show it more often. It's going to be interesting to see what Steve Cooper's assessment is. He was very coy about him again, as he always has been whenever he's been asked. But it's difficult to see how he can work his way into the first team. He's got players ahead of him, and when he gets his opportunities, he hasn't really taken them so far. When you're somebody who's coming on as a substitute, you need to be able to make an impact. You need to be a game changer. You need to be able to turn the tide of a match and make something happen. And he hasn't really done that in the chances that he's had so far this season. And that's difficult for him. I think he's better if he gets a run of games and he has more of an opportunity. But to do that, you need to show something in the first place. You need to move yourself up the pecking order and put yourself into the manager's thinking. And he's not really done that so far.
No, he seems to need this kind of very narrow set of parameters where he can succeed. Like you were saying there, Sarah, he needs freedom to roam. He needs a chance to influence a game. And you're not going to get that in the Championship, are you, Temps? It's a bit of a catch-22 with Carvalho now, isn't it?
Yeah, and then watch him in that League Cup game against Bradford City where he looked like an absolute wizard. And that's the difference, isn't it? And if he can operate in a pocket of space where he's not going to get clattered, then he'll look like a king. But if he's being hounded and coming on 2-0 down to try and change a game, it's not going to work for him. And I think ultimately his time at Forest is destined to be bitterly disappointing, which is a shame because when he first arrived, we were all extremely excited. I think fans are still with him. fans have stuck with him regardless of the indifference that a series of managers have shown. So yeah, like I'm very frustrated, as many are, with Carvalho, and who knows what's going on behind the scenes. But if we want to trade in January, people are going to have to leave, and I don't think there'd be too many tears cried for him.
The other pivotal moment of the game, in a sense, Sarah, was Zinkenagel's miss, which would have made it 1-1 and got Forest out of jail massively. What do you make of the miss? And what do you make of Zinkenagel in general? He's, like Tempster said, there's a bit of Carvalho about him in terms of talent and in terms of frustration, isn't there? But he's had a lot more end product this season.
Yes, he's had a more of an impact than Carvalho has had. He is similar in the sense that sometimes he can drift out of games and you think, is he actually on the pitch? Has he actually touched the ball yet? But then he has the ability to pop up and do something, get a goal, weigh in with an assist, make something happen. A bit like you want Carvalho to do. But yeah, Zinkenagel has shown that. The miss was horrible. I still don't know how he did it, but he had that really poor touch in the first half as well, where he was played in by Graben. He didn't quite get the ball right, and then it was pinched from him, and the moment passed really. And I think he was really off the pace yesterday. He just didn't quite get into the game, and he didn't look like himself. And he is a really good player. I do really like him. I think he's got a bit of class about him, and he's great to watch when he's on form. He can make such a difference. But again, and it's typical really of Championship players that it's finding consistency, and that's why you're at that level. If you're doing it week in, week out, you wouldn't be playing for a Championship club. You'd be in the Premier League. And that it's just trying to get more out of him, get him playing at those kind of levels more often. But I do really like him. I think he can have a big impact in the second half of the season and still be a key player.
Let's continue the theme of talented but frustrating and move on to Xande Silva, who wasn't particularly frustrating yesterday. He was pretty good, to be fair, but we haven't seen much of him. What do you make of him, Temps? Is he worth a start in the next game, or is that getting very much carried away?
Well, if he hadn't clattered the post yesterday and snuck that one in off the pullback, then my view might be slightly different. But for me, with goal scorers, seeing is believing. I don't think he's ever been anything like prolific enough to be considered the answer in the Championship. So no, he's not the answer for me. I know there's been some speculation that he might be on his way, Greece a potential destination, but again, I don't think he's the answer. And I think Forest would back themselves with the infrastructure now that they have to identify talent and to recruit players. They'd fancy their chances throwing the dice, shipping him out, getting one in, rather than investing time and effort in Xande Silva. I don't think he's the answer.
I read your piece, Sarah, on Silva this morning with the comments from the manager, which I'll post in the links after. I mean, I think the question was, is he going to Greece? And the answer was, that's a question for the CEO, which often to me means yes. He didn't really address it properly. What do you think's happening there?
Yeah, I don't think it would be any surprise if he does depart in January. And it will end up being one of those strange signings where in a few years' time we'll look back and think, what happened there? It was always it looked a strange one at the time, and it's not really come off. I still don't know really what his best position is. I know that sometimes can be a good thing, having that flexibility and being able to play in a few different roles. But I know we've not seen much of him, so it's difficult to say. But I don't see how he fits in. He's not going to get the goals that Forest need. He's not quite got the quality that they need to unlock defences. And I don't think it would be too much. I don't think it would be too much of a surprise if he goes in January, and I don't think it would be a great loss hugely. I think there's other players that Forest can look at to bring in and help in that attacking sense.
I think he's a left winger. I think yesterday was his best position. I mean, like the fact we're saying we think probably kind of says a bit, but one of the things it does show, I guess, is the squad's not stretched, but it does show that if you take out a couple of key players, there's a bit of a gulf, isn't there? It shows the importance of January. What's the initial inkling, Sarah, about how busy they will be in January? I know you spoke to the chairman at that Our Club, Our City event recently. Is it Our City? You'll have to remind me what it's called. But you spoke to the chairman anyway.
Yeah. I mean, January is crucial. It's such a huge window. I know we seem to say that every year, but if they get it right, it can make a huge difference for Forest this time. Given how close they are to the top six and how much of a difference getting a few key players in and not losing any as well, how important that can be. It's such an important window. I don't think we're going to see anything like 13, 15 signings brought in like we have in the past and mass deadline day panic buys. Forest have moved on from that. They are a little bit. They are more organised now in that sense. They do have a greater sense of what's needed. They do have more perspective, and they do have Dane Murphy, and I think he's made a big difference since he's come in. We saw that in the summer with some of the signings that they've made, and he's got a clear strategy and a clear vision. And Steve Cooper is very much aligned with that. They want younger players, and they want players that they can develop. There is some exceptions to that. They know they need experience as well. But generally, they want a youthful squad. They don't want a big squad. Again, that was a point that was so key in the summer. They wanted to reduce numbers. So we're not going to see a suddenly bloated dressing room at the end of January. Forest aren't going to stockpile players just to have them there in case or just for the sake of it. They hopefully going to be quite wise and careful about the decisions that they make. And that's a good thing. Doesn't always come off. There's no guarantees, but at least there's a vision there and a strategy, and I think that's something that Forest haven't had in the past. And going further forward, longer term, that can hopefully bear fruit and have a greater effect.
What are the top priorities for you now, Temps? Having seen yesterday, and obviously not getting overly alarmed by it and everything, but does it change the picture at all for what you think Forest might need?
I think a couple of weeks ago, my priorities would have been retain Spence, Johnson, Worrell. Obviously, the risk of the recall and the two most saleable assets. I think that the kind of noises coming out of the club are that retaining Johnson and Worrell is on the cards. We're not necessarily having to sell. They will have to offload one or two fringe players, such as the ones we've discussed earlier. Don't mind that at all. And then I would like to see the prioritisation of a striker, because I don't think Lyle Taylor's the answer, or suitable backup should Grabban suffer an injury. The contract situation with Grabban is still up in the air, so now's the time to do that. I think the encouraging thing is that if Forest had been lower end of mid-table or just kind of cruising to a mid-table finish, the board and Dane may have taken a view this is a chance to have a bit of an FFP season, make some cash, keep the wage bill manageable, and have a go next year. Where they find themselves now is it's worth buying a raffle ticket. It's worth trading 2 or 3 players, investing some cash now, with a significantly improved chance of fighting for a playoff place. So that encourages me. I think, to echo Sarah's point, the organisation and the faith in the people at the top of the club is stronger than ever. Nick Randall, very level thinker. Dane Murphy, very level thinker. Steve Cooper, super impressive. I like his media strategy. He hasn't bagged anyone at all. He's super positive about all the players, refusing to get drawn on transfer speculation, which might frustrate you guys, but I like it. I think it shows his credibility as a manager. I'm excited about the window, and I think we'll come out of it in a better place than we find ourselves now. But that Djed Spence thing is oh so crucial. Yeah,
it could be a long month for you, Sarah, when you ask about player X and player Y and get the same answer every time. Let's talk about a few specific names then. Probably start with Brennan Johnson then. I mean, it sounds like his dad saying he's not for sale, and he's obviously, all the noises are, he's very happy at Forest. I guess it would take something astronomical for Forest to part with him this month, wouldn't it? Really silly money now.
Yeah, I think so. And they can do that. The one thing I think they do need to sort out, again, we've seen it with a few players, is his contract situation. The sooner they get him tied down to a new deal, the better, really, because then you're always leaving yourself open to somebody coming in and putting a lot of money on the table. And the more clubs do that, the harder sometimes it can become to turn it down. he does seem to be really happy here. He does seem to be enjoying his football and enjoying playing under Steve Cooper. He's getting game time, which wouldn't necessarily be the case if he moved on to a Premier League club. And I think that's so important when you're a young player and you're still developing. You're still getting, it's his first season in the Championship, really. You're still getting used to that kind of level. Playing week in, week out is crucial. And I think Brennan Johnson seems to grasp that. But if somebody turns up with a lot of money, if you're Forest, that can sometimes be difficult to turn down. I'd like to think that come the end of the window, they will still have Johnson and Worrell in place. I think that would be huge if they do. We saw it in the summer as well. It was great that they ended that window with them both still there. And hopefully it's the same again in January, because they're such key players, and to lose either of them would leave a huge hole, particularly where Forest are and how close they are to breaking into the playoff positions. Keep those two, and you've got, there's a really good basis of a squad there. It's just about adding more key elements around that and creating that strength in depth that Forest don't particularly have at the moment.
I suppose the fullback situation has the propensity to be an absolute nightmare, with Spence potentially going. Max Lowe hopefully will be back quite early in January. Then there's Jordi Osei-Tutu. Do you have to send him back now, Temps? I mean, he's obviously a good player, but he seems like he's just not up to the physical demands. I mean, saying that, he'll probably play 50 games a year for the next 10 years now, but do you have to send him back to Arsenal at this stage if you're Forest?
It looks like it, doesn't it? I'm not privy to the financial detail of that arrangement, but clearly Forest don't want someone just sat around on the physio bed. They want him in the side and competing. So I do think he probably will go back to Arsenal. And look, some deals will be lined up. We don't know what business has been talked about behind closed doors, what's already primed and ready to go. But yeah, unfortunately, I do think we'll lose Osei-Tutu. And then we're back to where we were a few weeks ago, that kind of first 11 that we all really rate, but then just quite a distinct lack of depth just in behind that. Just on the Brennan Johnson point, I think you're right, Sarah. Him signing a contract would be great for all parties. It gives him the money he deserves right now. It gives Forest the certainty of a significant fee if and when the time does come for him to move on. And I kind of hold Matty Cash as the best example of this. He waited for the right time to make his move, joined a mid-table Premiership club, and now he's really flourishing. His international career has kicked on, and off we go. But there's plenty of cautionary tales out there, like Ollie Burke or one or two others who just left too soon for the wrong move, and then ended up becoming frustrated either with the level they were playing or the situation they found themselves in various squads. But we can go back to Jenners, Dawson. They all signed long-term contracts. It didn't stop them achieving their ambition. It just worked for all parties at the given time. And when the irresistible offer came, ultimately they went on and thrived and achieved their potential. And I know Brennan Johnson isn't going to be at Forest in 4 or 5 years' time, I think, in my heart of hearts. But I think he's got a massive role to play this season and next in getting Forest to where we all think they should be.
And next as well. Think he'll be here next season, Sarah? Or Temps?
I do. Yeah, look, I think the scenario, my plan.
Your plan.
He signs a 5-year contract. He earns the money he wants to earn. He spends the next 18 months as a 90-minute footballer in the Championship or otherwise for Nottingham Forest. And then with, 150 league games behind him, if we're not in a position to give him Premier League football, he probably moves on. I think that works for everybody. At that point, his salary increases exponentially. He goes to the team that wants him. He's just that little bit more proven. I suppose the big question for him is, and his camp is, if he was at a Premiership club next season, would he be starting week in, week out, or would it get to January and he gets loaned back to the Championship? So, yeah, for me, I think that another 18 months as an absolute guaranteed starter at Forest would be the right thing for him to do, on the proviso that he signed his contract, he's earning his money, and there's a gentleman's agreement that in 18 months' time he can go if the bid is the right one.
Well, that's a beautiful scenario, and I hope it comes true. Or I hope he is here for 4 or 5 years, and we're an established Premier League club. But to get there, they're going to need to actually get promoted, and they're not going to get promoted without the kind of players they need. left back then, Sarah. I mean, they've got, hopefully they have Low. If Osei-Tutu goes back, do you think they'll go in for anyone else? I mean, we had the kind of the Loris Benito story, the Swiss left back on trial. That seems to have gone quiet. And now there's talk of Lee Buchanan again, which would make sense. Do you think that might be an avenue of business in January or not?
Yeah, I think that one probably does make a lot of sense. I do think they need some cover. Ideally, you want somebody who can play left or right, I think, who has that kind of flexibility to cover in both positions, because they are short. Osei-Tutu, I think I would agree with Temps. I think it's probably right that they terminate that loan early and free up a space for somebody else. Use the money to bring in other players and find a different kind of solution. Particularly, I mean, 2 months is a fairly long time to be laid off for, and you're getting towards the end of the season then. So I think they need to find some cover before that. Low hopefully will be back fairly soon. And he's been great. I've been really impressed with him. But Buchanan, I think, would make a decent addition. You can exploit Derby's position a little bit. I'm not sure they'll be in a position to say no, albeit they have done previously. But everything that's happened since, I think they'll, it's probably a situation that if you're Forest, you look at and think, well, we can do a bit of business there and try and get something done.
I'd really enjoy that Buchanan signing. Sorry to jump on that one, Sarah. I just think for the morale of the club, look, I don't want Derby to go under, but wouldn't it be nice just to let them pay the milk bill for a few weeks while we hoover up their best player for somewhere between £1 and £2 million?
What a Christmas they've had. The guy who did his talking on Twitter's pulled out, and now I see they're being linked with one of these crypto people. John Terry's hawking NFT chimp icons on Twitter. I don't know about what cryptocurrency is, but it all sounds very dodgy, certainly. Well, what about one thing on Derby? This is very off on a side. People who do their business on Twitter, as we know with Fawaz, they don't make good football owners, do they, Sarah or Temps? I'll let you both have that.
No. I think if you were trying to hold up an example of how not to do your business, then Fawaz is probably set the tone, and it's not got any better for anybody that follows suit since. No,
true.
Yeah, I mean, we've all worked in sport for a long time, and I think we all know that there's times you just got to keep your head down, and it's not in anyone's interest to curate some kind of habit of responding to every tweet, every bit of negativity, every bit of speculation. You know, Alan Hardy's a cautionary tale there. Fundamentally,
careful where you go with this.
Well, I was going to say that a fella that got in for the right reasons, saved the club, put a lot of his own money in there, and then it ended how it ended. So yeah, look, plenty of cautionary tales out there. Look, I do hope Derby get taken over. They're going to be in League One for a few years anyway, so it won't bother us too much. But look, we'd lose a lot if we lost that rivalry. And let's hope it's one that we can come out on top of for a good few years now.
Yeah, let's not go into how it ended for Alan Hardy and say no more about that. Last thing on transfers, I guess, is strikers. Forest are keen on the Arsenal striker Florian Balogun, I think is how you would say it, and probably a Premier League loan seems the most likely avenue, Sarah, in January.
Yeah, it seems like it. I think ideally it's a route that they're keen not to go down so much in the future. I know Steve Cooper has said several times that ideally he doesn't want to rely on loan signings, but nobody lives in an ideal world. The reality is that if you're a championship club, you do have to use that system, and it's important you use it well. It looks like that's kind of the route they'll go down in terms of looking at a striker. I think if you're looking longer term and looking for a successor for Lewis Grabban, that's probably something they'll try to address in the summer. But in the meantime, they need to bring somebody in that can help out and share the burden and get goals. Lewis Grabban has been in great form. I think he's played as good as he has done really for Forest so far this season. Whether that's partly to do with trying to earn a new contract, I'm sure that's maybe trying to help his negotiations a little bit. But either way, he's been brilliant, but he needs help. Lyle Taylor hasn't really been able to offer the kind of support that he needs. He's not got the goals or the extent of goals that you'd hope he would get. And Forest need a striker. I think we've said it for a long time now. They need extra support. They need somebody else who can come in and make a difference. And a young, hungry player from a Premier League club, hopefully that can help, and they can make a big difference.
I guess it's got to be a loan, hasn't it, Temps? Like Sarah says, the January window's not for permanent signings unless you're going really, really big or you're getting someone no one else wants, I suppose, aren't you?
Yeah, we've seen it in the past, haven't we? Like Dwight Gale's name gets mentioned every now and again. But if you're going to sign a proven championship level goal scorer for, it's real cash. And I think our money is best spent in the loan market, because barring injury, suspension, or something unforeseen, Grabban's the man. He can score another 10 goals between now and the end of the season. So I think what we're both calling for is credible backup, to keep him on his toes, keep him at his best. Because if he's on the bench and some, young, promising, hungry player is into that side, I think that they, at a push, they're going to score 5 and 6 goals, and they haven't got the nous, the presence, the kind of leadership, the off-field contribution that Grabban has. So I think what we're looking for is quality backup rather than looking to spend, 7, even 8 figures on a 20-goal man at this point. Let's wait for the summer and see what's out there.
True. There's still one more game to go this year before the window opens against Huddersfield at home on the 30th. I don't even know what day of the week that is, so I'm just going to say
Thursday.
The 30th. Thursday. There you go. You're ahead of me because I don't know what day it is today. What day is it today?
Monday.
Thank you. It's Monday. It's that time of year. So Forest v Huddersfield. Huddersfield overtook Forest and are now in the playoff places, so it's not going to be an easy one. Are you making any changes, Sarah, or going with the same sort of 11?
Well, I'll bring Djed Spence in.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think they'll make too many other changes apart from that. I think it's probably going to be Jack Colback in that left back position again, because there aren't really too many other options. Gaten Bong's there, but I think he's somebody that Steve Cooper seems to see as more of a, he's there, but perhaps not going to get into the starting 11 on a regular basis. I don't think I'd take too many other changes apart from that, really. I think I'd stick with a similar team, but maybe mix up the formation a little bit. I don't think I would. I mean, there's not too many other options. I think that's probably telling about where they are at the moment in terms of injuries and not having players available. I don't think there's a great deal of room for manoeuvre. So the first choice 11 sort of picks itself in a way. It's just getting the best out of them. I don't think we'll see a similar performance. I think Forest will be completely different against Huddersfield. I think they'll be back to the kind of Forest that we know. I'd like to think that Boxing Day was just a bad day and a one-off, and they'll hopefully find some kind of response and get back on track. I think that's going to be key. It's how you pick yourself up from a result and a performance like that and get back to what they were doing previously.
I suppose the only other options, Temps, would be maybe a Jada in midfield. I think Neil here mentions Cafu, who seems to have come back from the cold slightly, although it's still a bit chilly for him out there. And I think we've discussed Silva. Maybe he took Grabban off, so I take it he's not going to rest Grabban. But are you of the same opinion of Sarah? Just Spence is the only change, probably?
Yeah, exactly. That's the team he picked, and it's such an easy team talk. He just says to the boys, look, you've had one bad game in 16. I'm keeping faith with all of you. I'm forgiving individual mistakes because you've been trying to win games of football, playing positively. Go again, please, boys. And I think, in the week, he'll take Finn back aside at some point and say, look, no shame there. You've come in, done a job, analyze that game, see the things that you need to improve to get to where you need to be. And I hope he doesn't feel downhearted or downbeat having been dropped. It's almost inevitable that he will be dropped because Djed Spence is coming and taking his place. He's been one of Forest's players of the season. So, yeah, same team for me. I can tell you're a bigger Jada fan, actually, Matt. You want to see more of him, don't you?
I am a bigger Jada fan, but I'm a big Garner fan as well. I just wonder if you're a bit lightweight in midfield with the Jada and Garner. I think you have to have Yates, and then do you drop Garner? I don't know. Maybe you play Garner. They've seen Garner as the advanced midfielder. Maybe you do that. I don't know. One thing on back. I mean, if I was Cooper, I'm not telling Steve Cooper how to manage, obviously, because he's better than me. But I wonder if it's just, like you say, put an arm on him and say, actually, that's my fault. And, I've thrown you to Wolves a bit there. You play in a slightly out of position. You've not played for months. But I think, he comes from that sporting mentality of his dad, doesn't he? He's probably tough enough to take it. And I wouldn't worry about him at all, to be fair. Sarah, are you confident Forest are going to get a result in this one?
Yeah, I am. I think they'll bounce back with a win. I think, like Temp says, they've got the perfect motivation. Really, they were just so poor yesterday that it's there for them. It's Steve Cooper's team talk's done. Go out and show that you're better than that. That's not who you are. And yeah, I think they'll win. I think they'll. It probably won't be comfortable because I think Huddersfield are a good team, and Forest sometimes have a habit of making it difficult for themselves. But I think they'll come away with the 3 points and hopefully end the year in a good position and then build on it in 2022.
Just lastly, Temps, on probably, it feels like a big game in terms of, I think I put in our notes before I said this, points on the board feels massive this year with the COVID situation. If Forest are going to have played 25 games and others are going to have played 22, potentially 21, they do need to get something from this game against Huddersfield, don't they?
Yeah, points on the board all day, because those having to rearrange fixtures will have congestion, which inevitably lead to picking teams that are sub-prime. And you can see if Forest were in a position where they had 3-4 games in 7-10 days towards the end of the season, that would not play to Lewis Grabban's strengths. However, if we can get the games in and continue to ride our luck a bit with the COVID cancellations, we could take advantage of that and potentially have a blank midweek when some of those around us are playing. So points on the board for sure. Glancing at the table, 2 points behind Huddersfield, who are 6th. They're on 36. So a win for them, all of a sudden the top 5 is 5 points away. A win for us, and we're in it. So I hate that 6-pointer phrase, but this one is. And look, the form over the last month, 2 months suggests we should win. And I just hope we don't go into ourselves. I hope we don't feel the need to, go back to that old way of playing cagily on the break. We're at home. The form's been great. Several players in really good form. Middlesbrough side. Let's get back on the front foot, attack from the whistle, and make this a routine victory to get us back on track and break into the top 6.
Yeah, hopefully so. Get the ball to Johnson. The service to Johnson yesterday was absolutely horrific. We're getting the ball in the right areas and they'll do well. Right, I think we shall leave it there. Thanks as ever to everyone who's watched along and listened along and dropped some comments in for those of you watching on live. And as ever, if you've enjoyed this, do subscribe and give us a nice rating because it helps get eyeballs and ears on the podcast, which we appreciate. And thanks to everyone who's listened along throughout the year, since this is probably our last podcast of the year. We do appreciate your support. Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Temps and family, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Merry Christmas. Yeah, sorry about all the crying in the background. He is a happy baby, I assure you. You just want to
Don't worry. I won't call social services after this. I know what it's like. So, yeah, thanks for everyone who watched along, and we shall be back early in the new year, most likely. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.